I also wanted to, at the beginning of our discussion tonight, do a few introductions of some of the people that are going to be both listening in this evening, as well as some people who are going to be answering questions and comments. Mayor Matt Hall, if you want to just give a wave, he is joining us this evening and is going to be listening in, has the opportunity to hear what all of you have to say. I also wanted to introduce Council Member Bhat Patel, who is also here with us listening in this evening. Council Member, I invite you to come off of mute, and if you'd like to offer a few introductory remarks. So over to you.
Sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. Before I get started, you might hear my dog barking in the background, the joys of working from home. So thanks for understanding in case he does. And then I have my baby with me in case he wakes up. So my name is Priya Bhat Patel. I am the council member in District 3, and glad to be here with you all today. I'll be here to just listen and hear some of the concerns you all have to share today. And then I know our team will be here to answer any questions. And then, of course, the mayor and myself will be taking all of that information and applying it to any decision making we have in the future. So just here to listen, and thank you all for being here and taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Council Member. I do have a few other introductions of people that you're going to be hearing from quite a bit over our time together. So they're going to be on the screens and they're going to give a wave, everyone. So you can feel free to watch for them. I'd like to introduce Holly Nelson, who is our Senior Homeless Program Manager. She is with us this evening. I also have Assistant Police Chief Mickey Williams, if you want to give a wave as well. I have our Housing Services Manager, David De Cordova, who is here with us. David, if you want to give everyone a wave, welcome, welcome. And then you're also going to notice, everyone, that we do have a few of our other city team members. They're supporting some of the technology in the background. They're going to be supporting some of the note taking. So those of you that have attended online meetings know it takes many hands to make all of this technology move around. So we do have some people who are here supporting those things. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what to expect tonight. We're scheduled to run for about 90 minutes, so we should be done around 7 p.m. This evening. So our time together is broken up in a couple of different ways. We're going to begin in a moment. I'm going to give a bit of a Zoom technology overview, so know that that's coming. And then we're going to dive into, I'm going to invite Holly to come on and share some information about what has already been planned. What is the city already thinking about to reduce homelessness in Carlsbad? So she's going to give us a bit of an overview of what the city's been working on thus far. There also is going to be an opportunity where we're going to open up the floor to people who have an interest in asking questions or providing comments or feedback. That will be followed by then both Holly, Mickey, David there to respond to questions as well as answer questions or respond to any of the comments. Now, you can imagine that with 76 people online right now, there's a decent amount of moving parts. So we will, once we do our overview, we're going to give an opportunity for everyone to, again, ask questions, provide comments. We're going to collect all of that. And then when all of those questions and comments are completed, we'll move over to that discussion portion where I will get our city team members to respond back. So I'll tell you a little bit more about how we're going to make that technology work here in a couple of moments. The last thing that I wanted to say before I dive into how to work Zoom and some of the features you might want to be aware of is, again, now we have 77 people, which is incredible. We really appreciate, again, those of you that have come to join us this evening. Having conversations about homelessness is never easy. This is a complex topic that has a lot of different perspectives, has many different approaches. And so to that end, we're going to invite all of you tonight. We want to ensure that people feel safe. We want to ensure that people feel really comfortable. We want to ensure that regardless of your perspective, that you have the opportunity to participate in a way that feels really respectful and productive. And so to that end, I'm going to invite everyone, whether it's when you come off of mute or if it's in the chat box, we encourage you to really embark in some really respectful discussion with one another. We know that this topic is not simple. And so in advance, we very much thank you for that. Let me tell you, and I'm seeing people are still starting to come in. Those of you that have been joining us over the last couple of minutes, again, welcome, welcome. We are just getting started and providing a little bit of housekeeping and technology overview. So let me tell you a bit about how this platform works. Some of you, you've been using Zoom for many, many months now. For some of you, this might be a very first. A couple of features that I want you to be aware of. For most of you that are joining on a computer, whether that's a laptop or a desktop, you're going to be looking for a toolbar along the bottom of your screen. And along that toolbar, you're going to see things like mute and unmute. You're going to be seeing things like start your video or stop your video. You're going to be seeing a word that says chat, and it's going to have a little speech bubble. We're going to be using the chat quite a bit, so please feel free to look to find that. And then last but not least, and I do promise to give this instruction again later, so don't worry about finding it right away if you don't. You're looking for a button that says reactions. And in that button that says reactions, you are going to see something that says raise hand. Later, when we get to our open discussion, I will invite those people that would like to speak to use that raise hand feature. That lets us know that you have something that you would like to ask, or lets us know that you have something that you would like to share. Don't worry, I will review that one more time before we actually get there.
Homelessness.
And let me just check and see if there's anything else that I need to tell you about. Just checking my notes. The last thing I wanted to share with you, and then I'm going to be turning it, or we're going to start with some of our questions and get some of you warmed up and thinking. All of this input, we've got a series of these online meetings. We also have an online survey that is happening. All of that data, all of that input and feedback will be compiled, and it's going to be shared back with the Homeless Action Subcommittee on October 28th. And I'm going to get one of my team members to input the link to that session. So if you're interested in following along at that subcommittee, you can find that link in the chat. Last but not least, on technology, we do have a person. Sarah is her name. She's going to be putting her phone number in the chat for you. If for some reason you're struggling with your technology, things aren't working for you the way that you're expecting, please feel free to give Sarah Lemons a call. She will be there and do her best to support you with any of the technology any technology struggles that you might be having. Okay, so let's get warmed up. Let's do a little bit of thinking about this before I bring Holly. Margaret, we have a slide and a question that we wanted to share with all of our community members here. I'm going to get you to find that chat feature right now. And in that chat feature, I would very much like you to answer this question. What's one thing that you know for sure about homelessness in Carlsbad? Again, in the chat right now, to get us warmed up, to get us thinking a little bit more about our topic at hand, share with us in the chat right now, what's one thing that you know for sure about homelessness in Carlsbad? And just giving a minute for people to respond in the chat. Some people say that certainly it exists. Others sharing that it continues to expand. Other people saying that it's been their experience that it's actually getting worse than what they've seen before. Just taking a look at some of the other comments here, that it's affecting many communities and it's affecting many different people. Again, more people saying it's on the rise. Some people getting fearful of it being out of control or really starting to impact their experience living here in Carlsbad. So thank you everyone for sharing many of those messages. Called out a few of them, but do know that there's lots of other messages coming in the chat. Now, I want to flip and ask you a different question. Margaret, if you could bring that second question up for me. The second question that we wanted you to ask is, first we said here's something that you know for sure about homelessness in Carlsbad. Now, on the other side, I want you to share again in the chat box, what's one thing you're uncertain about? Or what's something else that you're not as sure of? So again, looking for you to respond in the chat. What's something that you're uncertain about related to homelessness in Carlsbad, or that you're unsure about? And I see lots of messages here coming in the chat. Some people saying, I know that there's many reasons for people to experience homelessness. And so we need to understand what are those different kinds. Some people saying, I don't really know very much about the city programs or what the city is doing right now. People having questions about how come hotel vouchers? What is the purpose of that? And what are we trying to do? Others just curious about in general, what is Carlsbad doing? And then some other people saying, I really actually don't know how to solve it. Back to some of those comments that we had earlier about this is a really complex topic, and certainly many cities across the country are trying to tackle it in a variety of different ways. So thank you everyone for sharing many of those comments there. So I've been talking quite a bit so far, and I'd like to turn it over to Holly, who I introduced earlier. She's going to provide, again, a short overview of here's what's happening right now. Here's what the city has been thinking about and has been planning. So Holly, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kim. And thank you everyone for coming tonight. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in a community meeting on the topic of homelessness. I first want to say and start the meeting by saying we've heard loud and clear that reducing homelessness is one of our community's top priorities. It is our top priority too. We are in the process of expanding our efforts to reduce homelessness. In fact, Carlsbad now has one of the most comprehensive programs in the region. Our goal is to use the best data available, listen to the experts, and come up with strategies that are most likely to make a long-term difference. We've brought on staff and contractors with specific subject matter expertise in the area of homelessness. And we've developed a new department of housing and homeless services to ensure all of our efforts are well coordinated, integrated, and focused. I will play a short video in a few minutes to give you an overview of our plan. But first, I just want to say solutions will take time. And I know that I'd like to give you some background on the issue of homelessness. As you know, homelessness is one of the most challenging problems in our nation, not just here in Carlsbad. We have a long-term goal of reducing the number of people experiencing homelessness. But that will take time, and that's why we're measuring short-term results as well. But it's important to hear the feedback from our community at meetings like these to make sure that we are focusing on areas that are most important to you. So to start, we want to give you some basic information about what we know about homelessness in Carlsbad. In terms of numbers, there are two main sources. The latest point in time count found that 147 people experienced homelessness in Carlsbad. This is a nationwide count that's done very early in the morning for about 4 hours. We didn't do one this year because of COVID, so that number is from January 2020. The other way we have we understand the numbers is from members of our homeless outreach team and our contracted social workers who keep track of the numbers of the people that they come in contact with throughout the year. That number was around 500 in 2020. For obvious reasons, it's hard to get an accurate count of the number of people experiencing homelessness, but we do know that because of the pandemic and recent changes in the law, people experiencing homelessness are more visible than ever before. One of the advantages of having our homeless outreach team members is to keep track of the people that they come in contact with, so they can gather data to help us better tailor our services to help people find permanent housing. Based on these contacts, what we found was about 70% reported that their last permanent address was in the city of Carlsbad. This is consistent with nationwide statistics that show most people experience homelessness in the community where they're from. More than 43% of the individuals that we had contact with were 50 years or older, and about 60% were veterans. We also got a lot of questions about mental illness and substance use. And here's the data from the Regional Task Force on the Homeless from the point in time count. What we found is that 58% of the San Diego's homeless population reported having a disability. 32% reported having a chronic health condition, 37% reported having mental health, and 31% reported having a substance use disorder. One question we get a lot is, why do people become homeless? There are very big answers to this question, having to do with lots of answers: income inequality, lack of affordable housing, systemic racism, deinstitutionalization, and many other issues. Some of the ways that these issues have show up is with someone that has suddenly lost their job, or has an illness, or perhaps has an accident, or maybe their spouse has passed away. Maybe they're a victim of domestic violence, or they're somebody who's aging out of the foster care system, and they just don't have a place to go. Some people may be surprised to know that many members of our homeless population in Carlsbad have jobs. What we've learned is 20% either work full-time, part-time, or have some type of employment, but they don't earn enough for permanent housing. So I know everybody probably has a picture in their mind about what a homeless person looks like or acts, but just like any community, our population is quite diverse. Now that I've provided you some basic information about what we know about homelessness in Carlsbad, I'd like to show you a video that will provide a very high level and overview of some of the initiatives we are planning.
The city of Carlsbad knows that homelessness is a top concern for our community, and we're committed to doing everything we can to solve this really difficult problem. But lasting solutions can take a very long time. That's why we need a combination of short and long-term interventions. The city has already been working on the issue of homelessness, but a new, more comprehensive plan will increase existing efforts and add new programs based on sound research. Studies show that the old approach of requiring someone to address their issues first in order to be considered ready for housing doesn't work very well because too many people can't overcome the barriers to getting help. This ends up costing more because emergency room visits increase, as do contacts with law enforcement and the time spent living on the streets. Housing First removes barriers to getting into housing so people can get access to services as quickly as possible. Having a stable place to live provides a foundation to more successfully address the issues that led to becoming homeless. This approach ends up costing less in the long run. One way the city of Carlsbad is using the Housing First approach is through a 12-month pilot voucher program, partially funded through federal grants. Through this program, certain people experiencing homelessness can stay in a hotel or motel with a specialized program in place that includes support services. The program will focus on shelter for women and families, individuals living in encampments, people who frequently use emergency rooms and public safety services, individuals with an underlying medical condition, and those 65 and older. The city will also work with the La Posada Emergency Shelter for Adult Men, the only homeless shelter in Carlsbad, to hire 2 social workers and provide training to existing shelter staff so the shelter can help more people. Another part of the city's program is to quickly intervene when people become homeless. Through a contract with the Community Resource Center, individuals and families will be rapidly rehoused and provided with support services so they can get back into permanent housing. Looking to remove as many barriers to housing as possible, the city will also develop a pilot program with the Humane Society to provide temporary shelter to pets of people experiencing homelessness. Given the complexity of issues related to homelessness, many different parts of the city work on the city's response. A new Housing and Homeless Services Department will consolidate these efforts and increase coordination, not just within the city, but with regional agencies and nonprofit groups. In addition to greater coordination among the existing efforts, the city is adding resources where they're needed most. This includes 1 sergeant and 2 new officers for the police department's homeless outreach team. The city will also gain access to a new social worker and mental health specialist through the County of San Diego. Plus, we will contract with a benefits specialist to help people get access to veterans benefits, food assistance, and other available resources. While the city addresses the immediate needs of those experiencing homelessness, we also realize that more affordable housing is needed. The city's recently approved housing plan identifies ways to create more affordable housing and locations where that housing could be built. Finally, to create more opportunities for the public to learn about the city's efforts and provide feedback, as well as check on progress, the City Council created the Homeless Action Subcommittee, which will help ensure the city's programs are meeting the community's needs. Learn more about the city's homeless response plan on the city's website. And thanks for being involved in this important issue.
Thanks, Holly, for that overview. Let me tell you a little bit about what comes from here. We've had quite a few more people join us over the last 5 or 10 minutes. So I want to go back over just a little bit of what you can expect this evening, because I do know we have new people that have joined us. So momentarily, we had Holly Nelson provide us an overview of some of the programs and initiatives that the city is working on. Coming up next, there's an opportunity for all of you who are on the call to provide questions, offer comments, to give feedback on some of the things that you've been thinking about and hearing. We're going to collect all those comments. We're going to collect all of those questions. And then as we head towards the latter half of our time together, I'm going to be calling back Holly, Assistant Chief Williams, to respond to some of the questions and some of the comments. Now, I do want to make sure everyone, again, I said this at the beginning, this is a tough issue to talk about. And I'm already noticing in the chat that people have different experiences and people have different fears and concerns, worries, hopes, all of those things all go into the mix. And so I'm going to, again, just call and request. I want people to feel comfortable and I want people to feel safe in the conversation that we're having today. So certainly I encourage you to share your perspective, and I invite you to be really respectful of other people's perspective, because we know that there are many out there. So again, whether it's in the comments that you offer or the feedback that you're sharing in the chat, again, we want to make sure that everyone feels like they participated in a really safe conversation tonight. So here's what we're going to do. I want to get a sense of how many people are interested in offering a comment or, giving questions. So again, you're going to be looking for that raise hand feature. So again, you're going to find it in a couple of places. It could potentially either be in the reactions button that's along your bottom toolbar. Those of you that might be joining on a device or a handheld device, you might have to do some swiping back and forth, sort of toggling around to find. Every device is a little different about where you're going to find those features. Last option is you also have the opportunity, you're looking for that button that says participants. And there also should be a way beside your name to do something that says raise hand. So again, we've got, I see a couple of people are finding those features. And again, we're going to be monitoring the chat for any questions or comments that come in there. So here's what's happened the last few meetings. I've got a few people who have raised their hand to get us started. Everyone has 3 minutes to offer questions or comments. If you're done before 3 minutes, that's no problem. That's no problem at all. And then as we go, if you find questions or if there are extra comments that you'd like to offer, please feel free. That raise hand feature here will be open for a period of time. And it looks like I've got some more people who are joining us. Okay, so we're going to get started. And then again, please feel free to raise that hand as we go. Paul Marsteller, I believe that you were our first person who raised their hand. Paul, if you want to unmute yourself, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, hi. So in the last day or so, there was a poll put up on nextdoor.com in Carlsbad. And just to make it clear, the question was, are you in favor of Carlsbad's impending $13 million hotel voucher program? And then it went on to say that, do you think the city of Carlsbad should immediately proceed with its planned homeless hotel or motel voucher program in spite of its basic no questions asked laxness? Or should the city instead reconsider doing something more commonsensical? And it goes on to talk about what that is. Basically, you have no screening, no monitoring, no, much of any rehab, counseling, any of those things offered. Surprisingly, perhaps to most of you, out of 125 votes, this has just been up for about a day, 8% were in favor of going ahead and 92% said no, put it on hold and reconsider more common sense approaches. So if this is about what the people in the community want, I think, you guys probably haven't done a poll. This was done, and it's probably, I think on Nextdoor, there's a pretty good mix of people. They're not all conservative. They're not all the other. I think it's just gut feeling of what they felt about it. So if, for whatever it's worth, I thought I'd kick it off with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for your comments. Next person that I had raised their hand, Anthony Bona, over to you.
Thank you, Kim. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, Kim, thank you for what you do, and everyone else, Holly and Mickey and all the rest of the staff members who are here, Mayor Hall. However, I would like to call for another round of these, I guess you call them town hall forums, but this seems to be very scripted to me, and it doesn't feel right. So I think in the beginning, when Dr. Bhat Patel was introducing herself, or you were introducing her, it was said that she's just here to listen. It's also true of a couple other of these meetings I was on where they're just here to listen. Well, great, wonderful. You could just go watch the video if you want to listen. I envision something that's a little more interactive and less scripted. I don't understand why a council member has to be coached on how to respond to certain things. That's just my take. Second, I reject the Housing First model. It's a flawed model. There are other models that are more effective. Additionally, I reject this whole notion that there is a affordable housing issue. There is not. That is a myth that is being perpetuated. Basically, what really perplexes me is why we call this a homeless issue. This is not a homeless issue. This is a substance abuse and a psych issue. It's not a homeless. When you talk about people living out of their cars or paycheck to paycheck who miss something, that's one very small segment. But 70 to 80% of the people we're talking about have psychological and or substance abuse issues. So let's stop kidding ourselves that this is a homeless issue. It is not. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony, for your feedback and your comments. The next person that I have seen raise their hand, Marcy Horgan, if you'd like to come off of mute, 3 minutes over to you.
Hi, thanks for your time and your work on this issue. I think we all can recognize it's very complex, that there are people in this community that need help. But that said, I think we also need to really think about some kind of common sense measures when it comes especially to this voucher program and where people will be housed. You know, you yourself said, I think nearly 40% of people have mental health issues. 31% have substance abuse issues. We don't want this near communities with children, near vulnerable populations. So I would definitely like some more feedback on your plans as to where these people will be housed.
Thank you, Marcy.
Oh, and I will add too, there's been some talk about the hotels on Avenida and Encinas. Those are right across the street from a neighborhood, Waters End, that is just teeming with children. You know, we had a guy wander in a few weeks ago, started asking kids where they, you know, where do you go to school? Where are your parents? This is, I agree with Anthony, this is a mental health issue. This is a substance abuse issue for the most part. There's a Montessori school in Blue Water Crossing. It would just be wholly inappropriate, I think, for our elected officials and extremely irresponsible to push the program forward in that Avenida Encinas location.
Thank you, Marcy, for your comments. The next person I have is Richard Gallagher. I'm turning it over to you. Please come off of mute.
Thank you, Kim, and thanks for hosting this too. Doing a great job of hosting this. I don't disagree with any of the previous people who spoke. I live down also near South Ponto, not too far from Avenida Encinas. And while Waters End, I think, is ground zero for those hotel locations and the so-called people who receive these vouchers, but we don't live far from there either. We live near the Ralph Shopping Center. So my main concern is the hotel voucher program, and I do not think we should give vouchers to these people who are in residential neighborhoods. It's just as simple as that. There's lots of hotels that are around and other buildings that are alternatives to living or being near a residential neighborhood. That's our main concern. Also, totally, you know, homelessness is not a Carlsbad issue, right? It's a national issue, but I think we all know that. But we all live in Carlsbad, but this is not something that we can solve ourselves here. But I don't like the voucher program and the location of where we give these people the free housing, because it's creating little mini skid rows down here, you know, on Avenida Encinas, and like that woman talked about her children, you know, the Montessori school. It's just common sense. Don't bring these people to these type of neighborhoods. It's as simple as that. Nothing complicated. That's all. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for those comments. And everyone, I didn't say this earlier. I'm just going to say this right now. I certainly see more hands are coming up. Zoom does a pretty good job keeping track of the order that they came in. And so I'm just continuing to go down the list. Kelly LeBerthan, could you please come off of mute? Kelly, over to you.
Hi, thank you. The staff report states that the city's goal is to move homeless residents towards self-sufficiency and rehousing, but we cannot achieve those goals with the Housing First model for the simple reason there is no requirement for sobriety or participation in addiction and mental health services. Housing First offers support services, but the problem is the lack of participation in those services by the homeless. San Francisco's homeless report shows only 17% used mental health services and only 11% used substance abuse services. Unlike Housing First, Treatment First programs do work. They deliver strong rates of housing retention and dramatically improve lives. And contrary to what the city is reporting in that video, the Treatment First facilities provide housing and require that there is participation in drug treatment, mental health, and employment programs. Erica Sandberg writes about San Francisco's Project Roomkey. In April 2020, a few thousand homeless were routed to leased hotels. However, so many were living outside as a direct result of substance abuse or mental illness that lethal drug activity flourished. Then came the body count. In 2020, San Francisco saw 713 fatal drug overdoses. Nearly 3/4 perished while isolated in hotel rooms provided by the city. The reason? Project Roomkey hotels offer no addiction recovery treatment or mental health care, nor is there a sobriety requirement. In Aurora, Colorado, Mayor Mike Kaufman recently lived with the homeless population. He says, the shelter population and encampment inhabitants were two very distinct groups that never intersected. The encampment inhabitants tended to be much younger than those in the shelters, and the drug use much more serious. The real reason why the encampment inhabitants refuse to access the shelters is simple. The shelters have rules that drugs and drug use are prohibited. We will never be able to solve the problem of the encampments if we cannot first accurately describe the problem. Even San Francisco recognizes that their Housing First efforts are failing. The mayor hired a director of mental health reform, Dr. Bland, who discovered a population within a population called the perilous trifecta: men and women who are simultaneously homeless, psychotic, and addicted to alcohol, meth, or heroin.
Now, Kelly, I'm going to get you to pause there. I do see some other people who have hands up. If we have an opportunity at the end, I will certainly, if you want to raise your hand up again afterwards, we can come so you can finish your last thoughts, please, and thank you. The next person that I have on my list, Deborah Massa, and then we'll be followed after that by Karen Santoro, please. So Deborah, coming over to you.
Great, thank you. I have a question. I don't know, it's either for Mickey or for Holly, but I know obviously during COVID, the homeless problem and people living out of their cars was, very, very difficult for everyone. But now that we are hopefully, fingers crossed, past the worst of the pandemic, is there a plan to do a little bit more enforcement, especially on Avenida Encinas and the park and ride on La Costa and I-5 for folks living in cars and RVs who have taken over 3 and 4 parking spaces?
And Deborah, we certainly recorded that question. Any other questions or comments that you would like to offer?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. All right, so Karen Santoro, I'm coming over to you. Beth Ford, you will be after Karen. Karen, please come off a mute.
Hi, thank you. I think we all realize what a serious issue this is for the city of Carlsbad, and we're all very concerned. One of the questions I have is, in the presentation, how was the data collected? I think you mentioned that all of the people were from Carlsbad, and so I'm just curious how you collected that data. And also, I'm also curious on the impact to tourism in our city. and safety of, young families coming from out of town who may not know that the Motel 6 they're staying at has homeless, drug addicts, criminals in them.
Thank you, Karen, for your questions. Beth, I'm going to invite you to come off of mute and we'll be followed by Jessica Kramer. So Beth Ford, over to you, please.
Hello, I just want to say thank you very much for having this town hall this evening. And my comments and questions are more related to the fact that I live in Waters End. And if this housing, if it doesn't matter where the hotel is, if it's across the street from me or on the other side of town, this is just a bad idea and it shouldn't be around any neighborhoods, period. I don't want a Polly Klaas. I don't want a child to become another Polly Klaas, and I don't want another adult to become a Marjorie Gawitt. It was bad enough it happened once. It's disgusting that it happened twice. My comments are, or my question is more specific, are how do you ensure that you're complying with Megan's law if you're not doing criminal background checks? How do you protect the tax-paying residents of this city? And how do you improve the quality of life? That's all I'm going to say. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Beth. The next person I have, Jessica Kramer. I invite you to come off of mute and we'll be followed by Jeff Toth, please. Jessica, over to you. All right, Jessica.
Hi. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. I know that it can get quite heated, these discussions, and I do hope that we can put the us versus them mentality behind us and really work towards meaningful solutions.
Now,
I think we all agree that the meaningful solution here is seeing a reduction in the homelessness out in the areas that we all value within the city for different reasons or another.
So everyone, it looks like we're having a bit of a connection issue. Looks like—
Are there hearing issues?
Jessica, we do hear you. If you want to just hold just for a moment, I'm just going to do a couple of technology checks here. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, but Jessica, we are going to come back to you. Just give us 1 moment while we just do some checking here. Jeff, let's turn it over to you, and then I'm going to come back to Jessica.
All right. Can you guys hear me better than Jessica?
We can. Go ahead, Jeff.
All right, great. So I've been at a few of these meetings as well. And from what I'm getting is this is like an urban type plan where these hotels are isolated from the neighborhoods. It's just common sense. It's just straight common sense. But there's this misconception that this whole situation works in a vacuum. And I'll give you a firsthand example. I mean, so there's a Motel 6 on the corner of by Tip Top Meats, right? And I drive by that every day on the way back to my house. It's right across the street from Discovery Isle Childcare, and there's, I don't know, 500 or 600 houses next to it in Altamira and some apartments across the street. So one example is there is, a truck on blocks in the parking lot facing the street where everybody sees it. It was there like for a week like that on blocks. Finally, it got some tires on it, but the truck's still there 2 or 3 weeks. Somebody's living there being sponsored. You drive by, there's always cops there. I drove by today. Mickey probably knows there's 3 or 4 cop cars there, homeless outreach. And this program hasn't even started yet. These are just people who are being sponsored by by the county or by nonprofits. The other thing I wanted to point out is, the biggest pushback about is compassion. Everybody wants to say, where's your heart? Like, why don't you want to help people less fortunate, these poor people who are experiencing homelessness? And I don't think anybody feels like that. And I really get upset by being painted with that brush. And I kind of like to use an analogy to reduce divisiveness. And I'm fortunate enough that my parents are still alive. And I like to think that if something really bad happened to me, financially or whatever it was, that they would do everything they could to take care of me. But there would be rules, and as much as they loved me, I would not be able to do drugs in their house. I would not be able to terrorize their neighbors. I would not be able to put other family members in danger. And as much as it would break their heart, I would not be invited to stay. And here we are being asked to invite strangers, dangerous people to live amongst our children and our communities. And our leaders are not standing up for us at all. And it doesn't make any sense.
Thank you, Jeff, for your comments. Jessica, I have not forgotten you. I know our tech people are just sending you a couple of messages in the chat. It looks like you might be in the Zoom meeting twice, which is why the crackling is happening. So I'm going to give one more minute just to make sure we've sorted out the technology. I do promise, Jessica, I'm coming back. Jennifer Schultz, let's come to you. And then hopefully we've given Jessica enough time to make sure we can hear her. Jennifer Schultz, coming to you, please.
Hi, I've heard that there have been busing. They're busing in homeless people from around surrounding communities. And I would like to know if that is the case and why we are bringing them to Carlsbad. That's it.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your question. We have got it recorded. All right, Jessica, let's give this a go one more time. Let's get you to come off of mute and let's see if we can hear you this time. And I'll just give her a moment, everyone. It looks like our connection might be a little bit slow.
I heard that I'm logged on twice, but I'm only logged on once. So can you kick me off the extra login?
So Jessica, again, we'll see if Sarah and Margaret can see if they can help you out here. Just while we're sorting out that, Marco, I see that you have a hand up. I don't see a last name, but Marco, I'm going to turn it over to you, please.
Hi, I just want to say my name's Melissa. I'm Marco's wife, and sorry I couldn't log on today myself, but I just wanted to say that my family and I live in Waters End. We have a 12-year-old daughter. We 200% disagree with this homeless voucher program. This thing has been just getting with the individuals that are currently staying in that Motel 6 across from our neighborhood. It's getting worse by the day. And most of the time I have my daughter with me in my car, and we've seen women that are coming out from there with their pants down, standing on Avenida Encinas, people just shooting up outside of that hotel. And this is just driving, going to and from Rouse, or me taking my daughter to school. I've had people coming down the embankment from that Motel 6, standing in front of the Avenida Encinas, where I've had to slam on my brakes, honk my horn. It's just, and it's been numerous times that we've seen people with their pants down, walking. I mean, how do you explain this? How do you explain this to a child? Again, we are 200% do not agree with this at all. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Melissa, for coming and sharing your experience and your comments. I'm going to go to Jennifer Schultz next. I will then, after that, come to Heather Richardson, and we'll be checking back in here with Jessica. Jennifer Schultz, over to you.
I'm sorry, I've already stated my question. I just forgot to put my hand down. Thank you for coming back.
No, sorry. Yes, Jennifer, as the words were coming out of my mouth, I went, I think you've already asked her. Thank you for clarifying. A few too many moving pieces all at once. Heather Richardson, you are going to be next, and then Elizabeth, you're coming afterwards. So here we go. Heather, over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead, Heather.
I just want to start by saying my name is Dr. Heather Richardson, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've spent the last 25 years working in several different community outreach type of clinical psychology positions in prisons. I worked in a psychiatric hospital for the criminally insane. I've worked in juvenile hall. I've worked for county outpatient mental health programs. I've worked in the VA. I've worked for Kaiser, and I have worked for our school system. So I'm coming from a place of knowledge about the mental health issue. And I just want to point, I'm going to read something that I prepared. So Waters End is a densely populated community of over 200 single-family homes off Avenida Encinas in Carlsbad. The community is also surrounded by several other densely populated residential communities within walking distance, including Poinsettia Station, Poinsettia Cove, Hanover Beach Colony, Lakeshore Gardens, and San Pacifico. What these communities have in common is they are home to hundreds and perhaps thousands of families with small children, elderly people, single women living alone, disabled people, and other vulnerable populations. The recent increase in crime in the area is cause for great concern. It would be gravely remiss and irresponsible to ignore the problem. Ignoring the problem will lead to innocent children and adults being the victims of violent crime, molestation, kidnapping, and murder. The hotels along Avenida Encinas and the transient overnight parking are the cause for the increase in crime. Theft is at an all-time high, with car break-ins, bike thefts, and garage thefts occurring several times a week, if not daily. In 2019, a 64-year-old Carlsbad woman was violently murdered by stabbing in her home by a transient homeless couple who fled the scene in her car. A single elderly woman in Carlsbad was confronted at her home late at night by a mentally ill woman who broke in after stabbing someone down the street. Another woman recently confronted a man who entered her kitchen in the middle of the day through her back door. Approximately 2 years ago, a felon who was staying in one of the hotels came into an Avenida Encinas, hid from the police inside a Waters End resident's home. Lately, we have had several homeless people in the community that we have had to ask to leave. Most of them were under the influence of probably methamphetamine and other drugs, which we know can routinely cause paranoia and delusional thinking. And so they may even experience hallucinations, and in this altered state, perceive a threat when there is none, increasing the likelihood of some kind of violence. So the Motel 6.
And Heather, we've come to the end of time. I'm going to keep moving through our other participants who have raised hands. If you'd like to offer the end of your thought again, please feel free to raise your hand, and I will circle back around here again afterwards. Just want to ensure that we hear from as many people as possible. Elizabeth Galati, I believe that you're next, and then Paul will be coming to you after that. Elizabeth, over to you, please.
Yes, I'm unmuted. I've had a chance to write some notes, so I hope this makes some sense to everyone. I feel strongly that a voucher program without conditions is detrimental for the homeless and householders. No, there's no way to measure the success of the programs. We need to change a homeless person from one without a face, a person having no social ties to our community, into one who does. It's necessary to find those people who can be helped. There are those who want help but will not live inside. Many can. So we have to find out who those people who can be helped and concentrate our resources there. We can't help everyone. And we have to also know if we are approached by a homeless person, if we're considerate, how do I help that person other than digging into my purse and give them some bucks? That's my statement.
Thank you, Elizabeth,
Thank you.
for sharing your comments. Paul, I'm going to be coming to you here if you'd like to come off of mute. Roko N, I believe you will be next. So Paul, coming to you, please.
Yeah, hi again. So I talked about this Nextdoor poll that was informal, and I'm sure most of you rolled your eyes and think it was a small sampling. Why does the city not, before they roll this out, do a real poll or take the citizens, come up and tell us about it, more transparency on details? Some of us have been paying attention, we dig out a few things here and there, but why don't you guys come out in a meeting possibly like this and tell us details of this, how this is going to be, when and how you're going to measure success and where you'd pull the plug if it's failing, you have too much crime or whatever, and then we can have some say, and maybe we can have a poll then and see who's in favor once we know about it. Right now, it's it's so sketchy in terms of details that nobody has an opinion because they feel like, well, why? How could I have an opinion yet? You guys are sort of just doing it. I understand it could happen real soon. It may not. There's all kinds of talk about that. I mean, somewhere it was supposed to happen in June. Well, we're already in June. Then I heard something about it. If it doesn't happen by the end of September, maybe it's not going to happen. You know, why don't you tell us what the plan is, what some details are, and then ask the citizens, whoever, you don't have to do necessarily a ballot, but in some forum or something, ask us what we think about it and measure that. And if you see 90% then or against it, maybe you should pay attention to that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Rocco, I am coming over to you. Then Kelly, you'll be next after that.
Thank you. Just want to mention, this is not just about Motel 6. We're getting a lot of transients on this side of Carlsbad. Our zip code 92009. Across the school from Point City School, we have homeless people. At the skate park at Alga Norte, we have, and they seem to be where kids are mostly playing. So I'm with most of these people on Zoom. I'm same opinion that this is out of hand. We had a drowning in the neighborhood. It took the cops to take so long to get to this drowning issue. And we asked him what's going on. He said we had over 800 calls in the last week just for all the extra transient stuff. I mean, this is from the police officers' own mouth. So I'm worried about what effects it's going to have to our police force for our security as well. There's a lot of collateral damage on, you know, with the other things that goes with their services in the city. This is just not about fixing the homeless. It's about getting to our other needs. But I'm letting you guys know that it will come to a point where kids are going to be unsafe, schools, drug use, drug sales at schools, PRS, Pacific Ridge, the skate park. And this, if you go to skate park now, you see the kids, 12, 13-year-old kids smoking pot middle of the day. So where is that coming from? That's not usually, it was never there before. But anyway, I'm worried about the security, worried about staff, and worried about, is this to do with money we're getting for? I heard a rumor that we might be getting some money from FEMA to house these people in vouchers. So there's got to be something going on that we're not having any voice. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Kelly, I'm coming over to you, and then Angela Derby, you will be next. Kelly, turning it over to you.
Thank you. I just come back now to the Housing First versus the Treatment First programs, because I feel that the message I'm getting from the city website Q&A and the video is that it's a given that they're going to go with the Housing First program, and that is such a demonstrably failed program. I don't understand why if this is a discussion on how to proceed and getting input, is it not valid to consider the treatment first option? And just to go back to my notes on, places like Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, failing with Housing First programs, it is not an issue of compassion. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And I'll just read one person's description. San Francisco's current policy toward the perilous trifecta can best be described as compassionate neglect. Every year, the chronically homeless cycle through the institutions of the socialized state, from hospitals, jails, and shelters to sobering centers, case management appointments, and 72-hour psychiatric holds. Local government provides enough to meet an outward standard of compassion, but not enough to alter the trajectories of the homeless. And this is disastrous. Other failed not to pick on San Francisco, but they decriminalize quality of life crimes like public camping and drug consumption. They destigmatize drug abuse. They say that addiction is an involuntary brain disease. You know, if Carlsbad truly wants to rescue individuals from a life on the street, we must acknowledge the drug, alcohol, and mental health problems that walk hand in hand with homelessness. We must break the chains of addiction so the individual has a path forward to a productive life. Rescue these poor souls from the chaotic prison that drugs, alcohol, and mental illness confine them to. And by Carlsbad's own city website numbers, approximately 68% of our homeless males have mental illness and or substance abuse issues. So that's a significant number. And I do have a question. My understanding was that Carlsbad is not housing women or children or families, that they go to Vista or Escondido. And the question is, are we...
Kelly, I'm just missing the end of that question. If you want to go ahead and type it into the chat. Everyone, here's what I want to, there's a couple of people who have raised their hand that have not yet had the opportunity to speak. I do want to make sure I go to anybody who hasn't yet had the opportunity to speak. I do also want to make sure that we have an opportunity to answer some of the questions and provide a little bit of, or an opportunity both for Holly and Assistant Police Chief Williams to come back and offer a little bit of information and response to some of the questions. So I'm going to be watching the time really closely just to make sure that we ensure that we have enough opportunity to do that. Angela, I'm going to be coming over to you, please.
Hi. Okay, so from my understanding, this program is to help reduce homelessness by 50% of the people who want help. The problem is the people who want help are currently seeking help and going to every avenue that they can to get help. The problem with the homeless in Carlsbad is the crime increase, and those are by people who don't want help. What are the solutions for people who don't want help to ensure our safety as Carlsbad residents? And what are we going to do about enforcement? Other cities are allowing enforcement of breaking up encampments and not allowing or enforcing camping laws. And I want to know why Carlsbad isn't doing so when Oceanside is, or other cities are. And I think that Carlsbad residents who are paying a lot to live here should be considered. It seems like the only people's rights who are considered right now are the homeless, and the ones who are now the victims are the ones who are housed and following all the laws are the ones that seem to have no rights right now. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Angela. Heather Richardson, coming to you, please.
Okay, I'll try to be more brief. My point with pointing out all of the crime that's happening as a result of the problem over at Motel 6 being a hub for drugs, prostitution, sex trafficking, and residents who already have felony records is that it's not a great place. Let's say it's a horrible place for any kind of homeless social program. That hotel, per the Carlsbad police, and they target Motel 6, but there's a few hotels right there on that strip, is already a huge problem. And I don't see how that could help any vulnerable homeless people who are in need of receiving mental health services or getting a leg up on their path back to permanent residency. I think it will just compound the problem that we already have there, because there's some homeless people that are not going to be committing crimes, and there's some homeless people that are going to be committing crimes. And then also you're putting all those people vulnerable to the crime that's already happening there at that hotel long before there has been any kind of program. So I think it would be really, really remiss and really irresponsible to place programs along those hotels. We already have a huge problem there. Per the Carlsbad Police, I'm not just making that up. They said it in the town hall when they came to the Waters End community. And that's all.
Thank you, Heather. Leah Persanco, please, coming over to you.
Hi there. So the first question that I have is actually the only question. What is being done to facilitate the police's ability to actually police the homeless population? So in other words, what are the city council members doing to support the local law enforcement and their ability to protect the community members? So we heard at a meeting that that we needed to speak to state elected officials in regards to this. But as far as the council members and the people who represent Carlsbad, what are they doing to push for state elected officials to allow the police to come in and take care of the community members, protect the community members from homelessness and issues that might be associated with homelessness, like drug abuse and mental health. So I would like to know, and I'm sure a lot of other people would like to know, that when are the police able to step in and what are the council members doing in order to support our local law enforcement and getting measures passed to allow them to actually police and or make arrests and protect us better.
Thank you, Leah, for those comments. Chris Ross, you're next, please. And Chris, I see you came off of mute, but unfortunately we don't hear you. Maybe just do a quick check of those settings for your audio. Let's try one more time. Not yet.
No.
And now try, Chris. Let's see if we can hear
Okay.
you. There we
go.
are.
Sorry, I'll be brief. I asked a question in the chat as well, but my question is really around the context of the voucher program with respect to Martin versus Boise Supreme Court. It would make a lot of sense to me if that was why we were doing the voucher program, is in order to be able to do enforcement of illegal encampment. If that's the case, I'd like the city just to say that, so it just makes more sense.
Thank you, Chris. Anthony, we're coming to you. Jessica, we'll try one more time when Anthony's done here, see if we can hear you this time, and then we'll be going to getting some questions. Anthony, let's see if we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kim. I was also at the Waters End meeting with several people. We were told, and I've been told not just at that meeting, but several times by our police that their hands are tied, right? Prop 40.
Now I'm checking everyone. I lost Anthony's audio. Holly, because I can see you, did you lose his audio as well? Yes. Okay. Looks like he may have frozen. So we'll just give him a minute, see if he can come back. Anthony, if you can hear me, you might need to hop off of the Zoom link and join back because it looks like we've lost you. Jessica, let's try that one more time, please. Jessica Kramer, over to you.
Can you hear me?
It's a little broken, but let's try.
I don't want to speak in broken English, so I'll just stick with the chatting, but I appreciate the effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Now, Paul, I do see your hand raised, but in an effort to try to ensure that we do have an opportunity to hear back from Holly and Assistant Police Chief Williams, I'm just going to call an end to comments here because we are coming close to the end of our time. So there was lots of questions, lots of comments. Our team is working quickly in the background to see if we can answer some of those. Tracy, I do see that your hand came up and we hadn't heard from you before. So Tracy, let's do one last comment, and then we'll make sure that we answer some of those questions. All right, Tracy, over to you, please.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Mine's just really quick question. And this was to Dr. Bhat Patel. You recently at a council meeting had indicated that you wanted $150,000 set aside for diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I guess my question to you is this the form of diversity, inclusion, and equity that you were looking for in Carlsbad? And is that part of the plan, is to have that person spending that amount of money working through the homeless program? So, and I know that you can't answer that question, but maybe you can at some time. Maybe tomorrow's meeting might be an appropriate time during the budget meeting that you can discuss that. Thank you.
Okay, Anthony, it looks like we lost you there and if you came back, if you can be brief, quickly, over to you.
Thanks, Kim. Technology, gotta love it, right? So I was saying that I was at Water's End, and the police were telling the folks, Prop 47, Prop 57, AB 109, Martin v. Boise, their hands are tied. There's not a lot they can do. I get it. But what doesn't make logical sense to me as a tax-paying citizen is if we have a group of police that their hands are tied, they can't do anything, why are we adding more police? Because we're going to have more police telling us their hands are tied. Prop 47, 57, AB 109, Martin v. Boise. Why are we adding more police when there's nothing they can do? That's it. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Anthony. Okay, Paul, if you can be super, super quick, let's turn it over to you. And then I do want to get to some of these questions. Paul, over to you, please. And
Yeah,
just,
hi. I guess following up on what Anthony was saying, I was also at the Water's End meeting. It was kind of scary in a way. Previous week, a couple of guys had entered a garage with a woman that just pulled in with her car, and they walked up on her. She got real fierce and yelled at them, and fortunately they ran away. She got a video of them. Helicopter found them, apprehended them, and we understand they were staying at the Motel 6 up there, and they were let go an hour later. When Keith Blackburn was asked about it at that Water's End meeting, he looked around, he said, what can we do about it was the question. If somebody comes in our house, and he mentioned the castle doctrine, well, everybody probably knows that means you get your gun. And so if we've come to the old West stage of this, then something's really got to be done. This is getting out of hand. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, everyone. Looks like, Mickey, I have a couple of questions for you that maybe we will start off with. A few of the questions that had come in. First one, how has police enforcement been curtailed due to COVID, and will that change starting June 15th?
So related to COVID, COVID affected us primarily in two different ways as it relates to enforcement related to homelessness issues. First, there was the issue of encampments, and the CDC has provided guidance since March of 2020 that law enforcement should not dismantle or cause people to move from encampments that are on public lands. And the rationale behind it was during the time where we had a stay-at-home order, and it seemed the recommendation from CDC was based on the rationale that it would be more dangerous to have people moving around and being dislocated by law enforcement than allowing them to camp. And that's the recommendation that we've been following. Expecting the reopening movement on June 15th, we were already in the works with the city attorney's office to reevaluate that position to see if there is going to be an opportunity to start clearing encampments that are on public lands. It should be noted that in 2019, prior to COVID, the HOT team in Carlsbad cleared over 200 encampments. So we have a very active homeless outreach team that when permitted, has been able to go out and actively address encampments. But unfortunately, due to COVID, that was put on hold based on the CDC. Secondarily, the COVID also affected the criminal justice system greatly. It shut down the courts, essentially, with no jury trials because of the COVID issues. So prosecution for crimes has been seriously hampered. In addition to that, the jails understandably needed to reduce their population so that they could have space to spread prisoners out, which resulted in the modification of their booking criteria, which basically prevented police officers from taking somebody that they arrested from the community and putting them in jail unless it was some of the most serious crimes. The crimes that are being discussed here that is being seen on a more regular basis, like drug abuse, theft, stolen vehicles, those were crimes that were not able to be put into jail during COVID because of the understandable restrictions by the jail to try to make sure that they provided a safe place to house prisoners. So those are some of the things that COVID affected as far as our enforcement capabilities, but we do expect those to be changing. The jail is already reevaluating the booking criteria. And like I said, we're also working with the city attorney's office to reevaluate the stance on encampments in the CDC recommendation.
Thank you, Mickey. I do have a couple more questions. For you, everyone. Just a reminder, especially in that chat, appreciating people of different perspectives, see the world differently, and we really want to make sure that we are, looking after one another and ensuring that we're being respectful of one another. So please, my request is just make sure that we are appreciating differences and continuing the conversation. So please, our request with that. Another question for you here. Do we need the voucher program to be able to take enforcement actions against encampments?
So that question focuses on the Martin versus Boise decision that you might have heard of. And essentially that decision from the court said that it's unconstitutional for law enforcement or for the government to punish people that are homeless for sleeping in public unless there's a reasonable alternative that's offered to them. And so what that requires is that before we're able to take enforcement for illegal camping in public, like in parks or other public areas, we have to have a reasonable housing alternative available for that person. So the vouchers are going to be provide us an opportunity to provide reasonable alternative housing, and therefore, if a person refuses the voucher but is still illegally camping in public, we would have the authority to then enforce because we had met the criteria of Martin versus Boise.
Thank you. And I do have one last question for you here. Some people had mentioned some problems along Avenida Encinas. What's the police department doing about that?
So we've heard loud and clear regarding the issues related to the hotels and near Water's End and other areas along Paseo del Norte and Avenida Encinas. And so what the police department does and has done for a long time, it's called Crime Analysis and Response. It's our CARS program, and it basically utilizes a weekly review of filed crime reports where all of our lieutenants and managers meet every Wednesday, go over the crime reports, and then provide direction to our police officers on where to patrol and where we should be expending our proactive efforts to address or to try to disrupt any crime trends. And we did see an increase in criminal activity along the Avenida Encinas and Paseo del Norte area between Poinsettia and Palomar Airport Road. As a result of that, we've directed significant resources into that area to try to provide a large police presence. Our crime response team crime suppression team, which is a sergeant and 3 officers that are specifically assigned to proactive enforcement and don't necessarily respond to radio calls, have spent a considerable amount of time in those areas conducting traffic stops, searching people that may be on probation or parole and staying at the hotels, and other type of enforcement activities in the area, which is partly why you see so much police activity. It seems to kind of snowball when we see crime, which the neighborhood understandably becomes concerned about. When we then put proactive officers out in the area conducting numerous traffic stops, pedestrian stops, and those type of efforts, it seems like there's just this enormous amount of police presence, which there is, but some of that, a lot of that is proactive efforts based on our response to the data we saw.
Thank you. We're going to come to, I do have a few questions for Holly. To all of the people who are listening in, we may go just a couple of minutes over our intended end time of 7 p.m. There was a few other key questions or things that people had been asking about that we did want to provide the opportunity to respond to. So we will be going just a couple of minutes over, and then we'll let you know what next steps look like. Holly, wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how exactly would the voucher program work? What would the rules be? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the on-site security.
Yeah, so right now we are currently working with hoping to finalize the contract, and we will be bringing that back to council hopefully later this month or in July, and that will be sharing that with city council and also be presenting different hotel options for council to decide. So the rules of the program, we will be serving people who are experiencing homelessness in the city of Carlsbad. So they literally have to be homeless. We are going to be following the federal and state guidelines of Housing First best practices. We are going to be trying to help individuals. 50% of them we're hoping to graduate into permanent housing. 30% we're hoping to get into emergency shelter or transitional housing. And then we are trying to provide, again, security on site. We will have behavioral health services. We will have intensive case management. What we did was we tailored our services so we would have a smaller ratio of staff to individuals there so that we could help provide more support and more intensive services. We are looking at the numbers of potentially serving about 100 to 120 people. And again, the rules around, again, no violence, no illegal drug use on site. People will need to follow, again, make sure that their rooms are getting cleaned on a regular basis, making sure that they're not having overnight guests, that are unauthorized. We'll have to make sure that, again, that that there's supervision of minors. I mean, there's a lot of different rules in place. And a lot of different evaluations of different programs. Again, we have 144 beds in North County. So we have 3 different shelters. I know people had asked, we have 1 shelter here in Carlsbad that serves men only. And so the region as a whole talked about how we could address homelessness. So I know that's a big issue is, Carlsbad is just one city. So collectively, how can we address the issues? And so we really looked at one of the big things that all of our cities looked at in North County was how to address it regionally. And that was to expand emergency and temporary housing options. And so a motel voucher is a program that can do that without building a facility that would take years to do.
Thank you, Holly. So we're coming to the end of our time together to all of you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what comes next from here. Councilmember Bhat Patel, I'm going to come to you in a moment, see if you wanted to offer any closing remarks. Reminder, everyone, as I said earlier, this recording will be, meeting that is being recorded will be posted on the website afterwards. all of the data that has and input and feedback that has been collected from the online survey and our previous 3 online meetings will be put together. It's going to be shared with the Homeless Action Subcommittee again on June 28th. So if you do know people who haven't had the opportunity to attend and are interested in providing feedback, they certainly can still go to the online survey. Council member, anything that you would like to offer before we come to close?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for joining. I know we've been receiving quite a few communications regarding this, and I know I've been on the phone or chatted with folks on this particular topic. If there are any questions you have, feel free to reach out to me at my email or phone, and I'd be happy to get back in touch with you. And I know that our team is working hard, so I just want to thank our team, our police department, our homelessness department, and just folks all across our communications department for putting this on. So I just want to say thank you to them. And I know that they're doing what they can as much as possible to make sure that they can help, the community, and definitely willing to help address any questions. Like I said, just during this, we're unable to, so I'm happy to do that on my own time for sure. So thank you.
And last but not least, everyone, there were a number of questions that were gathered tonight that we didn't have the opportunity to address. Our team is going to do as best as we possibly can to address those questions. Responses will be posted online afterwards. So we do encourage you to go back to our project website so that you have the opportunity to view those responses. You will also see more information on the website. This is an ongoing discussion. There's continued opportunities to reach out both to Carlsbad PD as well as Holly and her team. And so we encourage you to watch for those. So again, thank you very much for coming this evening. Thank you for your willingness to share. Thank you for your willingness to listen to others. And we'd like to bid you a very good night. Thank you for coming, everyone.